Okay, so let's get right into it. We're going to explore that really complex system of rules that's designed to protect our money and hopefully prevent total financial chaos. It's a fascinating story, really, one of crisis and reaction, and it affects every single one of us. So, first things first, to really get why all these rules exist, we have to understand what makes a bank so different. I mean, it's not just another business on the corner. Its health is directly wired into the health of the entire economy. Well, here's the thing. If your local coffee shop closes, it's a bummer, right? But if a bank fails, that's a whole different story. It all comes down to confidence. When one bank goes under, it can start a chain reaction, a contagious loss of faith that spreads across the entire financial system. People everywhere suddenly start asking, wait, is my money safe? Even at banks that are perfectly healthy. So this all boils down to two huge reasons for these rules. The first is pretty straightforward, to protect us, the consumers, from any shady or unfair practices. But the second reason, the much bigger one, is to protect the whole economy from collapsing under the weight of a full-blown financial panic. And this right here, this shows you exactly how that domino effect works. It all kicks off with fear. A rumor, maybe some bad news about one bank, and you get a bank run. Everyone lining up to get their cash out all at once. Now, to get that cash, the bank has to sell off its assets. Think business loans, mortgages. But they have to sell them fast and cheap. That can push the bank into insolvency. And that's when the panic goes nuclear and spreads to other banks. And look, this isn't just some textbook theory. This exact chain reaction played out on an absolutely catastrophic scale during the Great Depression. I mean, it was the biggest wave of bank failures in U.S. history, and it forced the government to build a brand new, powerful safety net from the ground up. What's so wild about this timeline is that it shows you how regulation is almost always a direct reaction to a disaster. See, the Federal Reserve was created back in 1914, but even that wasn't enough to stop the absolute panic of the Great Depression. Between 1930 and 1933, get this, more than 9,000 banks failed. This unbelievable collapse forced the government to create its most powerful tool yet for restoring people's faith in the system. So the Federal Reserve, the Fed, was originally set up to be this emergency lender. The idea was simple. If a bank is facing a temporary cash shortage because of a run, it shouldn't have to sell off all its good assets at a huge loss. Instead, it could just get a short-term loan from the Fed to get through the storm. But the real game changer? Oh, it was the FDIC for sure. By insuring your deposits, it gave everyone a rock-solid reason to believe their money was safe, no matter what happened to the bank itself. That simple guarantee was powerful enough to stop most bank runs before they could even start. It just broke that whole cycle of panic. Okay, so with these emergency backstops, like the Fed and the FDIC in place, regulators could finally shift their focus. They could move from just reacting to crises to being proactive, creating rules designed to keep banks healthy in the first place. So how do you make sure banks are playing it safe? Well, one of the biggest tools is something called equity capital. It's basically the bank's own money, not the money you deposited. And this quote explains it perfectly with an analogy. A bank's capital is like the deductible on your car insurance. It's their skin in the game. The more of their own money they have on the line, the less likely they are to take some crazy, foolish risk. So you can really think of this as a two-part strategy. First, you have those capital requirements we just talked about. That's the financial cushion. And second, you have regular bank examinations. This is literally where regulators show up, go through the books, check out the management, and really kick the tires on the bank's assets to make sure everything's being run safely. But then, the game changed. Fast forward to the 21st century, and a brand new, way bigger challenge pops up. The financial system was now home to these gigantic, interconnected institutions that were so huge, their failure was just unthinkable. And the 2008 financial crisis? Man, that brought this whole problem to a terrifying head. The failure of massive banks like Washington Mutual threatened to pull the entire global financial system down with it. It was a crisis that forced the government to step in on a scale nobody'd ever seen before. In the heat of that crisis, Congress passed the Troubled Asset Relief Program. You probably know it as TARP. And this was the headline-grabbing number that, for a lot of people, defined the whole mess. This was the infamous bailout. The basic idea was for the government to act as a kind of emergency plumber for the financial system, buying up all those toxic mortgage-related assets that were clogging the pipes and injecting fresh cash into the banks to get them stable and, hopefully, lending money again. And this all gets to the heart of this huge dilemma. regulators started to believe that letting one of these giant firms just go bankrupt could trigger another Great Depression or maybe even worse. And so this idea of too big to fail was born, an unspoken promise that if things got bad enough, the government would have to step in and save them. And this chart, man, it just perfectly lays out the impossible no-win situation regulators were in. On one side, you can let a firm like Lehman Brothers fail. And whoops, you trigger massive market chaos and make the whole crisis even deeper. Or you can bail out the other giants, but in doing so, you create this whole other tricky problem. And that problem has a name: moral hazard. It's a really important idea. Think about it. If the biggest banks believe that no matter what happens, the government will always be there to rescue them, what's stopping them from making even riskier bets to chase bigger and bigger profits? They get to keep the winnings, but if they lose, the taxpayers get stuck with the bill. So the 2008 crisis made one thing painfully clear. The old rulebook just wasn't going to cut it for the modern financial world. This realization led to the single biggest overhaul of financial regulation since the Great Depression. And the big response was this massive piece of legislation, the Dodd-Frank Act. I mean, this thing was huge. It tried to tackle the problems from every possible angle. It created a new council whose only job is to look out for risks across the entire system, not just one bank at a time. It beefed up consumer protection, gave the Fed more power to watch the big guys, and even tried to ban certain kinds of super risky trading by banks. And that brings us right up to today. We have this new, stronger rulebook that's specifically designed to fix what went wrong in the last crisis. But the debate is far from over. Are these rules enough to stop the next crisis, whatever that might look like? Well, that is the ultimate and so far unanswered question.